Welcome to the Two Wealth Show, a show that shares how you can create real wealth for you and your family. I'm one of your hosts, Justin Bogard, and my co-host is Elizabeth Sickles, aka Super E. I am a real estate note investor, specializing in performing residential real estate debt. I find the deals, acquire them for my own portfolio, as well as educate investors while walking them through the process of owning a real estate note. My co-host Super E, a real estate investor, specializing in short-term rentals and the management of them. She connects investors with short-term tenants and manages everything in between. Our show is sponsored by BrightPath Notes and Elizabeth Maora. You can find out more information by visiting our websites at brightpathnotes.com and elizabethmaora.com.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm Elizabeth with Elizabeth Maora, and this is episode number 21.
All right. Elizabeth, are you doing well, and are you excited to continue on a conversation with the legend, Mr. Dave Short?
I am. I love it when Dave talks because it's a good idea to listen.
I know. I just sit back and be like, Dave, just spill it all out there. Let me absorb it. I'm going to take some notes. I took some notes on the last episode as well. So he said some things that I haven't heard him say before that I'm going to remember the next time I get into a situation. So without further ado, Mr. Dave Short. Hey, Dave.
It's great to be back.
Long time no see, right?
Yep.
Dave, we kind of heard a little bit of your history in the last episode about kind of how your tenure in the business and real estate, what you like, what you didn't like, what your favorite parts are. You gave us some great information about flipping and kind of little details and the side hustle within those details as far as what to look out for, how to maximize your profitability, to be able to obviously generate more income, generate more cash flow. And so I think what Elizabeth and I are very curious to find out is kind of what's going on in the real estate market today as far as, we'll just talk about real estate investing, not real estate brokerage, and what you see that works well today, and then carry forward kind of how you see stuff happening within the next year or the next couple of years with your experience in real estate.
Well, from what I'm seeing is I think rentals, good rentals will be really high in demand and bring really high rents. I don't know that we'll see close to the 1% rule, but we'll see much better and higher end product than we have previous 2 or 3 years. Some of the situations that I'm seeing, even the high end apartments, and I didn't consider them high end. 3 years ago they were renting at $850 to $950 a month, and now these same apartments are $1,150, $1,200 a month. And when you go into an apartment project today, they'll quote your rent today, but if you call them tomorrow, it might be $12 higher, might be $15 higher. So they're just not locking in rents; they're locking in demand on rents. And that's a huge thing to look at. And that's why I think good high-end rentals, like we talked about in the last episode, the best tenant is one that could be an owner if they chose to be one. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of tenant base that I think everybody should look out for. And you'll have less vacancy, less damage in properties, and probably have a longer-term tenant because they're wanting a home instead of what I call a place to stay. And if they want a place to stay, it's probably not a good idea to rent them. I see long-term as really strong. We have so many people that we coach and talk to, well, I'm waiting till prices go down. Well, folks, prices aren't going down. They're not going to go down. We have, our country has almost a 5-year pent-up demand for need for housing on it. So with that kind of demand, that's why you see all the builders buying subdivisions intact, buying them all, so they have places to add inventory. And the builders in Indianapolis absolutely cannot keep up with demand for housing in Indianapolis. Some of the local builders that we see here and we've looked at is that they start a house, they're now giving the buyers no choices in the house. Not even the colors, not even the carpet. You go in, this is our house that we're selling. And if you don't buy it today, it's going to be $2,000 more in 2 weeks.
Right.
And they raise the houses just consistently like that. My son just closed his house and he paid it was like $450 for his house. And then he had a glitch with his financing, ended up getting it worked out. But the builder wanted to back out because they could put the house back on the market for $510.
Wow.
So they didn't want him to close on the house. So that's the kind of demand that we have out in the marketplace. This is why flipping's so good right now, is that you can go into all areas of town and give somebody a really, really nice product, even though you may have a crummy house sitting right next to it. That's going to be that's going to be something that is really nice for them, that helps change these neighborhoods around. For instance, in a $110,000 flip or $120,000 flip, if somebody puts 3% down, they're going to have a payment of $750 a month total on it. Then they go down the road and they'll live in a 700 square foot apartment, no basement, no garage, no yard, and they'll pay $900 for that. So this is why the entry level flips are such a backlog and such a good market. It's why they sell with multiple offers 1 or 2 days in the market, because it's so much easier to buy today because of interest rates.
Right.
I see the interest rates staying consistent for the next 2 to 3 years. I think for every month that we go and we get closer to an election cycle, then the kiss of death would be to raise interest rates during an election cycle, because that party will be gone if that happens. So as we get closer and closer to an election cycle, then they'll not raise rates and keep them fairly consistent. So I think for the next 2 or 3 years that we'll have really good interest rates and the market will be really strong, because you don't understand how much demand there is for housing today on it. And housing is something that's safe, habitable, in a decent neighborhood. To me, it's not the D neighborhoods and the E neighborhoods. You're never going to change those. Those are always going to have the tenant that can never buy, and they're not. The real estate's the vehicle, the management's the key. And anytime the real estate's the vehicle and the management's the key, you probably got a problem child on your hands as far as trying to manage that property.
Yeah, what you said about the interest rate kind of coincides what I heard as well. The Feds, I believe, said the most they would raise it up is maybe 0.25% the next couple of years. So that's
1.5%. 1.5% is that really is consumer debt is what they're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the people that's out in the public trying to spend their money, and do they want to pull money out of the system? And right now they can't afford to pull money out of the system. So that's why I think we'll keep fairly good interest rates for the foreseeable future.
Do you see the inventory and real estate for we'll call it the housing shortage right now, for what we talked about earlier? Do you see that balancing out very soon, or do you think it's going to take a while?
Oh, they're saying it's a minimum of 5 years on it. And because of the imbalance of our housing today, is all of our housing that's coming online is probably an average sale price of $300,000. So the economy the wages have to keep up with the type of product that is, satisfying the housing shortage. So the people need to make it. Well, they either have to make more income or get lower interest rates to satisfy the demand and the desire. So there'll be a mix somewhere between that. Wages will be, probably a little higher, and interest rates, they stay consistent. And now we can keep up with start to eliminate some of the shortage we have with houses. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but
yeah, it does. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Well, one of the things kind of I wanted to touch on too, just for our listeners, is that Dave has been in this business almost 50 years, and he's done so many different aspects of real estate. And one of the things that you ventured into a couple of years ago was the Irvington Event Center.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk with our listeners about how you made a decision to do something totally new with this event center? Because it was a huge rehab that you undertook, totally new space. So can you just talk to us about that?
Well, I can talk good and bad about that. It's I can talk about the reason we did it is the reason we did it. This was going to be, I don't want legacy is not really the right word, but I wanted to bring something to the marketplace that was needed in the Irvington community, which is direly needed. I also wanted to have something that I could create checkbook money, passive income. It's not a passive business, but we can hire the aspects to make it passive for me. Where my event manager, and she's the executive director of Cyria now, Jillian Rodman, is she understands my situation. Is that, hey, I want to have this space, I want it operating, and I just need her to call me every couple of weeks and let me know how things are going. So this is the first business that I've tried to develop, and it's been it's not all roses because of COVID. It really set us back here, but it's the first business in 47 years that I can consider it. At some point in life, I can consider this passive income for me, and it's the business that lets me, if I choose not to flip houses anymore, I can do that and have reoccurring revenue that can be counted on every month. It's a unbelievable facility, and we're getting there, and it's and like you said, being transparent, it's kind of like we didn't get it done quite as fast as we want. We ended up redeveloping it slower because I didn't want to give up quality in the business. I would, because knowing we had COVID, we couldn't lease spaces anyway. So we just took the rehab down a notch and still doing the same quality rehab that we would do in any of our flip houses. But the event business is a good business. The co-working is a long time, it's a long-term benefit. It's like, where can you go if you have 3 employees and if you're at a bricks and sticks location in Indianapolis, you're going to be paying $2,500 for that space for 3 or 4 people to have. And you can come to our space and lease something for $900 a month and have your own private office, and you can have 5 conference rooms that you can acquire or use. You have a podcast room you can use. The copies are free. The janitorial's free. The Wi-Fi's free. You have a kitchen where you can get all your drinks. So it's like, it's just, it's totally turnkey for somebody that wants to, they really don't want to downsize their business, but they have to because they have no space to go to and they can't afford, $2,500 to, if you have a $2,500 lease space, the cost of keeping that space is probably $3,300 because you got janitorial, you've got Wi-Fi, you've got everything that goes with owning an office. So the co-working space is a thing of the future, and we like to think we're, maybe a half a step ahead, and we have certainly a great location, and we have an event center. We can have corporate retreats and corporate events up to 300 people. We can have weddings up to 200 people. Wow. And our venue space is big, our cost is, I would say no more than 2/3 of what every other venue in town is. I mean, we're interested in booking events because, we want cash flow. on it.
Right.
I mean, we'll not hide that. I mean, we need to make a profit on this building. But our real estate co-working space, we have 15. We have 11 private offices. We have room for 50 to 60 members, and we have mailboxes. So you can have a total turnkey business in here for as little as $130 a month.
Yeah, it's incredible. Well, Elizabeth and I have both seen it when the building was when you first acquired it versus what it is today, and it's amazing what you guys have done in there to make it very, I would say, high tech and very like a new kind of fresh feel to it. So
Yeah, it's kind of like a new age. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff in our building, and we can have a concert. We're trying to book maybe some big name guys to come in for concerts in our space. So, and we have plenty of parking too. So
yeah,
there's a lot. We got a lot going on with a pretty good location.
Yeah, it's right off the interstate.
Yep.
Absolutely. And Dave, is this your first commercial renovation, or have you done commercial in the past?
I did a commercial renovation years ago, and it was awful. I could talk months about it. And we ended up selling that a couple years later. And but yeah, it was not a good venture there again. It was it was a great building, and we made it really nice, but we had a location issue, and location is everything in the commercial industry.
Yeah.
Have you ever ventured outside of the indie market, Dave, for any of your flips or real estate ventures?
Yeah, we've bought several years ago. I had a partner, and we bought several non-performing loans in the Midwest, and we did very well with those. And so we were, what I considered myself doing when I bought a non-performing loan was I was creating future flips if we didn't get them turned around. Mm-hmm. So we were willing to go to different communities to do that, because it might be a year or 2 years before they got turned into a flip, or they maybe didn't get turned into a flip at all, because there's a couple guys and Justin's one, and a couple other guys that sold me non-performings, but they would, Justin would sell me a non-performing loan because he knew I could get through it. Right. Or a new client, he would be very hesitant to sell that because he knows of all the downsides and all the risks. And it's like, like I said with my flipping, it's like, Justin wouldn't sell a note to somebody unless he would be, would probably own that note also. Yep. With the exception of non-performing, but he knows that's what I'm after, and that's what I do. We bought non-performings in Illinois, Ohio, several in Ohio, a few in Kentucky, and they were it was a fun part of the business, and some of my best profits in deals have been non-performing notes. Mm-hmm. Wow. But I was able to turn them around. We made in a non-performing note we bought up in Auburn, Indiana. We bought this non-performing. It was a $280,000 balance. Payments hadn't been made for 4 years. And we ended up buying it from the hedge fund for $95,000. And so it was a good property. And so I just drove up there the guy wouldn't return my call. So I just drove up there on a Sunday, knocked on his door and say, "Hey, I'm the bank, and I know you've got some situations and you haven't made the payments here for 4 years." And you know what he told me? He said, "Well, nobody's called me." He said, "I'm a doctor." He said, I can afford the payments, but nobody's called me. And I said, "Well, do you want to stay here or do you want to move on?" And he said, "No, I want to stay." And I said, "How's your credit score?" He said, "I'm fine." I said, "I'm an emergency room doctor." He said, "I make great living." And so I said, well, what if I would lower your mortgage down? Since you haven't made payments for several years, I'm going to have a hard time getting you a conventional mortgage, but I'll lower you down to the FHA requirement. I think I can get you an FHA mortgage. And he said, yeah, we'll do that. So we lowered his mortgage balance to $210,000. And he went and got a mortgage and paid me off in 5 weeks. So we owned the property and made we netted $110,000 on the property in 5 weeks.
Wow.
And everybody got a great deal. I mean, obviously I did really well. He got a $70,000 reduction on his mortgage from what he owed. And the hedge fund got out of it what they wanted out of it. So, and we've done that, not to that extreme, but we've probably had 3 other deals that we made in excess of $50,000 on buying non-performing and what we call modifying them or creating something for them to stay in the house, and then just resold the mortgages once we got them performing. So I could talk days on that. I mean, it's a lot of fun, but it's like when you do non-performing in our world is some of the things that performing people don't have to do is that they maybe don't physically drive and look at the property because the mortgage is what you're buying. And everybody that I've known that's bought non-performing that didn't drive the space didn't do well. Yep. It's just like we never drove a non-performing unless we drove to Columbus or unless we drove to Cleveland, unless we drove to Joliet, Illinois on it. So we would drive it, put our eyes on these houses to say, okay, if I had to own this at this number, I'm okay. And it might take me a year to get that number, but I'm okay owning it, at this number if I have to foreclose. But if you put your eyes on these properties and if you go by and the grass is cut and the yard's neat, they're driving nice cars, then you probably got circumstances there that doesn't fit the typical delinquency type situation. Yep. And I would drive to Columbus, and if I had 2 properties in Columbus, I would go to the nearest Century 21 office and say, who wants lunch? And I'd drive them by this house and ask them, if I paid you a 7% commission, what could you sell this house for in 30 days? So then I knew what I could buy. Yeah. I knew what my top end was on the house. But it was putting eyes on it. Anybody that I know that's bought a non-performing and didn't drive it, that's the big criteria. Where a performing, you don't necessarily have to do that.
Right. So, the Auburn, Indiana story that you just shared with us, Dave, Elizabeth, this is for you here. That was actually the first meeting that I went to, one of your subgroup meetings, Dave, and you wow. explained that story, and I was just like, oh, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's in the non-performing world. I like this guy.
Well, and not near as many people want those,
right?
And you have to be you have to have some discretion on what you buy and all that kind of thing. And one of the other things that we do is create mortgages. Mm-hmm. And I've got a little case study that we do in our flipping in our boot camp. And it's a house that I bought for $22,000. I put $10,000 in it and sold it for $80,000 on a 10% mortgage with $10,000 down. Well, I kept that property. I mean, it's silly. I kept that property for 3 years, and my total income on that property was almost $60,000 on that one property that we paid $22,000 for and put $10,000 in it.
Wow.
On it. So it's mind-boggling what performing and created mortgages can bring to an investor in regards to long-term cash flow and wealth.
Learn your financial calculator.
Yep, for sure.
That's exactly right.
Right. So, Elizabeth, I think you were going to jump in there with a question.
Oh, no, I really appreciate you sharing all this with our listeners, Dave, because there's so many ways to skin the cat with real estate, and especially just, to your point, knowing your numbers, that's such a huge advantage to folks.
Well, it is. And you know what? We struggle on, we get into a big flip. We struggle on getting the numbers right, so that's why we go in with, what we think are good margins on our properties to keep that from happening. And so if we go in thinking we're going to make $80,000 or $90,000, if we get down to 60 because of errors that we made, then 60 is okay. 60 is okay in the deal, or 30. And then there's deals you get in the middle of that. God, I just need to get out of this house. But it happened. That happens to all of us.
Mm-hmm. Dave, I have a question here, one of our last questions that we have time for today. And so what I always tell people with flips, because I'm not the expert in flipping houses, so I always say I didn't have a lot of success in it that some people do because they have a great system and a great process that they work with. But do any of your flips in your history ever go on time or on budget?
Obviously the smaller the flip, the more likely you can get time and budget on it. And I would say our $120,000 to $140,000 flips, they're typically pretty close to budget and pretty close to time. If we go to Bates Hendricks or go to bigger houses, then we struggle with it. We've had houses that we've bought, and we had one in Westfield, and it's probably 2 years ago. And I was committed to get this house in on time and budget. And we rehabbed it, we painted it, we carpeted it, put a new kitchen in, put a new bathroom in, put it on the market. But we had bought that house, rehabbed it, put it on the market, and sold it and closed it within 6 weeks. So we can, you can make budget, but the more houses, and this is one of the problems you have doing 40 flips versus 20 flips. Mm-hmm. I think we're trying to figure out what the numbers really are, but we think for every flip that you add to your inventory that you're doing at a time, you probably are giving away profit on one of your other flips.
Yeah. From
just a time standpoint. One of the calculators that I want to get, and we're actually trying to develop it, and I think would be pretty cool, is have a flip clock. And it's a clock that we can put in the house, and it we plug in the numbers on this clock, and we plug in interest costs per day, utility costs per day, tax costs per day, and everything. So every time my contractor and I walk into the house, I know what my holding costs are on that house. Mm-hmm. And I think it will motivate you to, and then you look at the contractor who didn't show up Tuesday like he said he would there, and he's with Friday. And I said, look, this is what you've cost me $300 in the 3 days for you not being here, because my taxes, my insurance, my interest, my utilities that's on this specific house. So, these things are, this is how you hire contractors. This is number one. This is why you hire better contractors. It's like you got the best tile guy in the world doing 3 bathrooms.
Yeah.
And he charges you $3,000 for the bathroom, but the tile company is going to charge you $5,000 for that same work. Well, that guy gets it done in a week, and the other guy is 6 weeks. So that one guy probably cost you $1,000 versus hiring the expensive guy going into the house.
Yeah. So
this is why you have to judge these things. I mean, if I've got a one-off tile guy, I'm putting him on 1 bathroom. I'm not letting him do 3 bathrooms in my house. So just, you're going to lose 30 days of work with that, 30 days of interest. having that guy in the house. And that's if he stays on the job.
Yeah. A whole another can of worms.
Yes.
I don't want to open. Well, Dave, thank you so much for being on our show and our previous show as well. We really appreciate the wealth and the knowledge that you bring to our industry. To myself personally, I appreciate all the advice you give me, a little mentorship that you give me as well.
Oh,
And,
thank you. You're welcome.
So one last question I have quickly. Is there any books or any thing you're looking at or learning right now that could be of interest to our listener?
Well, I'm doing a lot of, soul searching is the wrong word, but I'm reading a lot of books on time management and some other stuff. I'm going back and, I'm just going back and studying the book Think and Grow Rich again. I'm going back and with Tony Robbins. I'm a big Tony Robbins fan. Dealing with the with his information, because his is the more people that you can get to know, like, and trust you, the more likely you're going to be able to get jobs done on time, get jobs done here. And it's like, perfect example.
Uh-oh.
My people that know, likes, and trusts me, and she helped her out that evening on it. And you can't get anybody that evening on it, but we have people, because of the know, like, and trust and respect that you give, all your clients. And if you're arguing with your subs every day, then you're not going to be successful with that sub.
Right.
On it. And if you see I see the same reoccurring problems with flippers in our business, that, it's all about this, it's all about them. Well, it's boiling down to, it's just all about them. And if it's all about you, you're probably not going to be very successful in the real estate business, because you have so many different types of personalities that you got to coddle and keep happy and keep on your side on it. So
that's awesome. So for our listener here, best ways that you can have Dave help you out is he has the 3-day boot camp, and you can contact our local Cyrea, CIREIA.club to get into his boot camp. He also has a co-working space if you're in the Indianapolis kind of area and you need a place for host an event, or you need a place to basically do your business. If you're tired of working out of your home, it's a great place to go to. Irvington Coworking Space. It's irvingtoncoworking.com. And that is in on the east side of Indianapolis, kind of at 465 and 40.
Yeah, it's in the Irvington area.
Okay. Oh, so hence the word Irvington, right? I'm a genius. I know. All right, Dave, thank you so much for being on our show.
Well, I enjoyed it.
Truly appreciate that. So I'm Justin Bogard with BrightPath Notes.
I'm Elizabeth with Elizabeth Maora. And Dave, thank you again for sharing all of your knowledge and your time.
You're welcome.
All right, until next time, guys. See ya.
Bye.
The Two Wealth Show is produced by Justin Bogard and Super E, sponsored by BrightPath Notes and Elizabeth Maora. Thanks for listening and watching for our show.